Hello, people. Welcome to another edition of A Dose of Drew Friday Night Nights. Tonight we're looking at the Civivi Qubit. This one right here is they're all aluminum. This one is the Damascus version. It comes with the green handles. For those of you who don't know, Civivi has a lot of these. This is basically a 9CR18, and I can't remember if it's a 440C or VG10 basically, but it's like AUS 10 or something like that. But it is essentially a 9CR18 and like AUS 10 type laminate. It is pretty. Hey, look, there we go. Looks really cool, and it does have pretty good properties, especially for. Generally, it costs a little bit more than what you would imagine. It has properties pretty similar to something like 14C28N. And while it usually costs more, it's because it costs more to make, and you don't get that purdy with the 14C28N. So there you go with that one. First things first on here, let's get some empirical measurements. So we have the approximately 2 3/4 inch cutting edge with a 3-inch blade to there with an overall length of slightly more than 7 inches. It's about 7 1/8. This might be hard to see right there, but there it is. All right. Other things here. The weight on it is also pretty good. It is a button lock. Under 3 ounces. You will not see. It is under 3 ounces. It's about 2 3/4. It's about an ounce per inch on that, which is nice. And if you look inside, it is actually not milled out. Other than what's obviously in the pivot, there's not milling in. You probably can't see very well, but we'll do our best. This might be something that'll help. You probably can't see like that. There's no milling to help that. So it is just the aluminum and size and everything. The design itself falls within that range. And something else that's going to be in here. We'll do this real quick. Find the good spot. That's basically 90 thousandths, so 900ths of an inch. Very thin blade stock there. Really, really, really thin. And we'll get the behind the edge measurement real quick. 14 thousandths behind the edge. Very nice geometry numbers. If you look at that size, and in case we missed it before, approximately a little over an inch on the overall blade height. Very good slicing geometry with this knife. We'll get the relational bits out of the way here. The Spyderco Sandwich, the Paramilitary 2, as you can see, good hand space, similar hand space to the Paramilitary 2, smaller blade, and the Para 3 lightweight. Once again, similar hand space, similar cutting edge. Definitely an interesting bit there. It really kind of works with a similar blade height, but a thinner blade stock, similar hand space. We'll come back to, actually, I think there's another Spyderco that this actually competes better with, but we'll come back to that. It's just a blur from the Kershaw here, not just any leak, but a random leak. And as you can see, once again, similar hand space to the leak. A little bit less on the curve. If you were to roll the curve along, it's almost the same. Cutting edge, slightly shorter blade length. Interesting nonetheless. And even more hand space, honestly, than the Kershaw blur, but the blur quite obviously has it in edge length and space. Both of, one thing to note, however, similar, if not the same, blade stock as the leak, but nearly twice the grind height, which means that the sliciness of this is significantly better than the leak, which is incredibly slicey, just due to that thin blade stock all by itself. And one more here, the bug out. More hand space, a little bit less blade length. And its own brethren in the corporate world here, the Civivi Elementum. More hand space, similar blade cutting length, and in my opinion, better blade geometry. The hollow grind is a little bit different, but I think the blade and slicing geometry on the Qubit is slightly better, which is really nice to see. And of course, as you can see, my Wiener is bigger and thicker. Anyway, all right, so let's get into it. All those sizes really put this in a league of its own when it comes to certain things, and it is a really good button lock. But one of the things about Civivi on the button locks, see if you can see, I'll do it this way. If you can see that when you engage it, the button actually goes below the level of flush with the handle, which means that when you're putting your finger on it and you're covering the gap, if your finger acts like a bridge, you're not going to be able to disengage it. You have to roll into and below the level. You have to engage it that way. That's how a button lock should be done. That's what keeps it safe. That's what is great about something like the Kaiser Original. It goes below the surface. It's hard to see, but it goes below the surface. So you can't accidentally engage it while you're using the knife. You can it'll start to maybe get loose a little bit and rattle, but it won't actually break free. The OG button lock, the Malibu, goes flush almost with the indentation when you engage it. So you can't accidentally do so. It is almost flush. It is barely up above the handle. So that action is fantastic. And then you have ones, which for me, the Kaiser, here, the Kaiser Gemini, and there's a couple others, it is still above, you can see it is still above the handle while the blade is engaged, which means I can sit here in a pinch grip like I was using the knife and flip it around. It disengages. That's something that's a safety issue. It does not work for me. I don't like that. There's a couple of other button locks. I'm not against button locks. What I don't like is unsafe ones. This does not have that problem. And it is part of the design that I think is actually great. There's another part of the design they really took from is the handle. Look at that back end on the Qubit and the Elementum. They learned their lesson. This is very much like an Elementum handle, but with a little bit of a choil just kind of built in. And it allows you to really choke up, and it gives you a lot of space. I have 4 fingers plus, so wider than a large grip can fit on here in a saber grip. If you're that much larger, I don't know what to tell you. This is a pretty small knife for a guy with that big of hands. But you can also choke up, and the thumb studs give you a great sort of platform to just choke up with. And that thin blade stock is going to just slice. It is wicked good. Wicked good at doing this kind of paper. Doesn't always do that. There you go. So yeah, it has really thin behind the edge. Civivi always has there we go, shaving paper. Yeah, Civivi always has good apexing, very good factory edges, and this is no exception. And the sharpening choil is way back. You have lots of space to sharpen this up. You could thin the blade, but it's always just going to have, I mean, you take 1/8 of an inch off just in sharpening, you still have a ridiculously thin blade. And that's going to bring me to what I think this actually, the aesthetics are really nice, but I want to actually bring another competitor out that I think this provides a budget alternative to, and that is the Spyderco Native 5. And if you start to look at how these stack up a little bit, All right, the blades starts to make a little more sense. You get a lot of the same stuff. Now this is obviously the more expensive, but you still, the S30V versions and stuff are still about, maybe about twice as expensive as the Civivi Qubit. And you get a lot of the same value and even more sliciness, quite honestly, in blade stock and other stuff, and a lot of the same ergonomic feel as the native 5. For a lower amount of money and with the fidgetiness of a button lock that there really isn't. I think there's an 85 in Maximate that has the compression lockers or line lock, something like that. There are a couple, but most of them are lockbacks. And so, yeah, you get the fidgetiness of a button lock in a budget version that can give you a lot of the same feel as a Spyderco Native 5 in a lot of good ways. And I mean that as a high compliment. It may even be more accommodating to larger hands because the Spyderco has that prominent beak right there. It's even more accommodating to larger hands, arguably. So yeah, there's a lot to like there. And that's kind of one of the noteworthy points. Civivi really took a lot of the notes from what it's been learning in the last few years with its successes, the Elementum, the button locks. I would argue that one of the successes one of the button locks they may have even taken something from just in ideas and melded in there would be the Conspirator, a really good button lock knife in a larger size. That is outstanding. There's a review on my channel of that knife. They have taken what they've learned from lots of different good EDC knives and made a great one. And one of the things I'll even just say, if there's no lanyard hole, there's a lanyard post. A hidden lanyard post. Okay. There's what everyone calls a bottle opener. I thought, oh, they're just using it, but then I had to look. And they actually put a stop pin way out here that does make it so that when you use this as a bottle opener, any force felt against that is going almost, it's not hardly rotating, it's not giving leverage, it's almost applying directly to there and the pivot. This stop pin out here is moved way out to help alleviate any stresses from using that as a bottle opener. So it really is a sort of multi-tool. They really did, even if they didn't intend the design to be there, they realized that people would probably do it. And so they made sure the design was robust enough to handle lots of it. So you could use this as a bottle opener probably more times than you use it as a knife. And it has the robustness to handle it. That's good to know. That's a noteworthy point in and of itself, is that not only is it this, they have used so many things to make it a very general type handle for any hand size and type, and as well as different types of grips, which it does superbly. For what else this knife can be done, either by accident or by design, they have made sure that it was robust enough to handle that type of semi-abuse. So it can be done without worry. That's actually really, really cool. And the cost of value, I believe this one is closer to about 76 or so. It's closer to $80 for the Damascus version, and it's closer to $70, 67 or something like that. Or maybe it's 60, 65, something like that. It's about $15 for the Damascus. So it's like $65 for the 14C28N versions that come in different colors. Recommend all of them. I am probably going to myself buy one of the plain 14C28 versions, at least one. Just to have the 14C28N steel in this package. It's a great steel. This is a great package. I actually want that. The lightweight, the small form factor, the sliciness of this blade with that thin blade stock, high flat grind, and very thin behind the edge geometry to really make this a great slicey blade. And it's below pretty much most, the 3-inch blade limit is great, and the cutting edge is less, so you're going to be able to pass most urban laws and other laws when it comes to blade length. There's just so much to like about this. It's hard not to talk about the value ratio. Putting the value ratio on the Damascus version isn't quite fair, but a $65 14C28N version, oh my goodness, that is a crazy value. That is really, really hard to not look at the value on that one. It's incredible. And Civivi is known for the value. And with this model, I think they've really established themselves as looking towards providing a high value proposition in pocket knives. And they're succeeding. 14C28N is a great steel. This one doesn't have it. It's pretty, but it's what the other ones have. And this is a decent value. I don't know if it doesn't present the value proposition the 14C28N does. It offers an aesthetic benefit. And I wanted the green as well. And the green only comes with the Damascus blade. So there's some model limitations here that go with. But one of the things, the way I understand it, all of the blades are swappable, as well as the hardware. So if you get multiple models, you can swap pieces out. And that's kind of part of the value too. You spend $200 on 4 models of this knife, or $150 on 3 models. You now have models you can swap in and out, and you have 3 outstanding models. They really do have a collector value proposition too. And that's, I went in to look at this expecting to see a good EDC knife. I had seen some other people talk about the value this knife proposes. It actually exceeded my expectations. The thoughtfulness, the obvious learning and incorporation of good qualities from their other knives into this one, keeping the good and dumping the bad, is extraordinarily obvious in the design of this knife. And Civivi's really, really showing their chops with this design and execution. And I got to give them credit for it. It's a knife I could definitely buy more than one of, and likely will. Probably more than 2. It's just such a good value proposition in the lower value things, in the lower price tiers, that is hard to not. It really does present a great slicing EDC value, and even when we're, other than the proposition of not having different kinds of knives, but on a practicality level, you could have 2 or 3 of them and have all you needed for pocket knives, including backup, something happens. So yeah, it's a fantastic value proposition, and I don't really have any requests. There's a theme I'm starting to see with a lot of these makers. They're making these value knives, and they're making them with 14C28N, 154CM, sometimes D2, sometimes the Damascus 9CR18 on some of them, where they really present these value propositions. And 14C28N really presents a pretty good value. So when you see a great design with 14C28N steel, it's really hard to go up from there. It's not that you can't get better steel. It's just you give up something. You either give up on price and go up to something like MagnaCut, where you get better corrosion resistance, better edge retention, but a little bit less toughness. You give up something. You could do a titanium handle or a carbon fiber, but how much would the cost gain you? Yeah, the cost versus the return on investment or return on cost, it starts to level off somewhere right about there. Like it's subjective for sure. Yes, there's a very objective value proposition to a MagnaCut blade with a titanium or a more robust handle that is a less soft or scratchable steel than aluminum. But it's a significant cost. So does double the cost get you double the performance? And the answer is usually going to be no. Or it does, but at the expense of some other quality like toughness or something like that. So there's a couple of these out. In fact, if you're watching these videos in sequence, the video that's going to be released right after this one has a similar view, and I'm going to take it with this one. This is really hard to upgrade and not get a trade off in that upgrade. 14C28N has a lot of toughness. Yeah, you could go CPM 154 or MagnaCut or even something like S30V, S35VN, or, with something this thin, you want to maintain toughness. So, S35VN, maybe S45VN would probably do just as well. MagnaCut, which would get you a little bit more. CPM 154 to increase the toughness with a little bit, maybe, of edge retention bonus. You see what I'm saying? You give up something to get something. The aluminum is lightweight like titanium, a little bit softer, but my goodness, the cost is so low. So you get a good value proposition. The button lock is made in all aluminum. These are some decent chunks of aluminum. They're going to be strong, and they're well machined, and the anodization is great. It is a matte finish. So yeah, it's really hard to knock this as far as a request to upgrade. Basically, I'm fine with the aluminum handle. I would love to see Civivi do something similar to Spyderco and others, where you have this great base. Give us sprint runs with different blade steel. That's what I would like to see. I would like to get a couple of Qubits, get me a green, red, and blue to match all my outfits, or a green, blue, red, and black, and I can match all my outfits. And now you do sprint runs in whatever handle color or something that gives me like an S90V or something like that, and suddenly I have a reason to keep buying them, right? I can get a couple of these, and now I can have Qubits in there, and I can start mixing and matching to do my own type of, fashion stuff when it comes to my knife accessory here. I actually like that part of it, to being able to swap blades in case it is unclear about that. Anytime I pop out a Paramilitary 2 lightweight with an S45VN blade steel, there's some benefits to those kind of things sometimes. So yeah, there's that sort of thing out there all over the place. And yeah, I can definitely see how that kind of business model, as well as maintaining a model, can continue to go. You may not see the long-term sales, but you can always refresh sales with the quick sprint run. And that would probably be the only request, is give me some sprint runs with a similar handle. Give me, maybe a different anodization. Give me a purple or anything. Take a. You don't have to do it just like Spyderco, but there's a market for people to take a good knife design and get different blade steel so you can check how it does in the same bit. If nothing else, there's always things like the mules, right? So that people still buy, so they can check different steels in the same package by the same manufacturer. And I think that would be probably the only request I would have of Civivi, would be to maintain a model for a while, instead of always coming out with the newest model and the newest must-have and the newest, oh, well, you were just too late. Give us a model that we can have for a while. Give us something that we can play with. The Elementum's the only thing that you guys have kept around for a while with a million variations, but you don't space them out. You fizzle it out, and then there's nothing left. So spread it out a little bit and give us a longevity to the Qubit model, as I really do believe that its mixture of characteristics and qualities, much like the Kershaw Leak, are never going to go out of style. This is one of those knives that I think Civivi would be very smart and wise to maintain as an anchor or base model that they just have, and do sprint runs and do other things and come up with something every year or whatever just to refresh it. I think this would be a great model for Civivi to do that with, and they could do that very well. Different lock mechanisms, all that same sort of thing on the same platform. And I think more, just as much, it may not get the Elementums like Splash, where it went all over EDC and all that sort of thing, but this model's value proposition probably exceeds that, and its slicing capacity definitely does. So I highly recommend it, and that would be my request. And with that, I'm going to roll this up because it's hard not to say this is a 5-star knife. I can't recommend it. Well, I can recommend it enough, but it's hard to recommend other knives more except for specific use cases. As a general EDC knife, this is kind of my new one to tell people. It's like, hey, there's hardly any knives that can compete with it in its market sector and for its value proposition. And that's something Civivi has done before with the Elementum and several other knives, the Backlash, Praxis, the Mini Praxis. I think this knife beats them. I think it is better. And so I actually recommend it higher, and I think Civivi's done it again. And so I recommend this on a 5-star, highly recommended basis. Its design is absolutely outstanding. 5 stars. They couldn't have done more for an all-around general purpose EDC knife. They really, really couldn't. There's other things you put together, but nothing. It may not. There might be things that are better for certain stuff, but there's really nothing that's just better. It's right up there with all of the best, and it's a matter of subjective qualities. The aesthetics are great. You know, it's looks like a knife. It folds up nicely. It looks just generic enough to look like a tool. You know, the aesthetics are the pointiness. For me, for this particular model, the Damascus, folded metal looks really good. The pattern welded looks really good, and the mechanics out the box have been top notch. The sliciness of the blade is really, really hard to overstate. It really is. Like, that is one thin blade stock and an extraordinarily high flat grind. That makes for a very narrow triangle, and it will move through material. Cannot stress just how at the tip, at the base, in the middle. It just slices. And it does so very, very well, very smoothly, with a factory edge. And as a general EDC intended purpose overall, it's there. It is technically a multi-tool with a bottle opener on it, though they don't call it that. They definitely engineered it to be able to take that. And its value rate, and it's in the Damascus, it's not so much value unless you really want the green and the color, then it becomes a subjective. But in the 14C28N at about the $60, $65 price range, the cost to value ratio on this knife is just outstanding. There are arguably better ones out there where you get into like the QSP Penguin, the BR, the Chirp. There's several out there that get close, but I think it's really hard to match the fit, finish, and just overall design quality of this knife, as well as customer service, Civivi, all that stuff. It's really, really hard to get a better value ratio out of this knife. There's some that may do it by a small amount, but it's up there in the top 10. And that makes it really hard to do anything but give it that 5 stars for a recommendation. This is, after all, an incredible package piercer, a saran wrap slicer, a cardboard carver, and an envelope eviscerator extraordinaire with a great mechanical design, the aesthetics that put it right up there, and a good company that always, always, always seems to show their integrity with every knife they make, and that's really hard to come by. And was relatively just a handful of manufacturers, and I believe it's what most of them should and do aspire to. And so 5 stars, highly recommended. And with that, we're going to wrap this up. A great knife, another home run by Civivi. And so we're going to stop it there. You guys go ahead, take this video, watch it twice, comment as much as you like, be mindful of side effects. Remember to like and subscribe. This has been your dose of Drew. I am said Drew, and you guys have a great rest of your night.